Riley Strand arrived 4 minutes late to the most powerful room in the galaxy, the Unified Star Assembly, and she did so holding a steaming mug of something deeply aromatic that was definitely not part of any diplomatic protocol. Her entrance was not grand. It was casual, unbothered, a deliberate drift into a sea of alien decorum that smelled like ozone, incense, and self-importance. Her navy blue diplomatic uniform had the subtle gleam of adaptive fibers, a Terran invention none of the other delegates recognized, and her eyes, sharp, calculating, amused, swept the assembly like a scalpel waiting for soft tissue. "Apologies," she said smoothly, stepping up to the central podium. "Took a wrong turn at your species' ego and got stuck in a gravitational loop." Laughter echoed, some indulgent, most mocking, but it didn't matter. Riley logged their tones like data points, the smirks, the dismissals. She sipped from her cup. It wasn't tea, it wasn't coffee, it was strategy in liquid form. When Chancellor Dravox of the Zenthari Empire rose to dismiss Earth's border, dispute claim with the kind of flourish usually reserved for executions, Riley listened, nodded politely, and tilted her head just slightly. "Fascinating," she replied once he was done monologuing about jurisdiction and primitive species. "We developed indoor plumbing before you discovered oxygen recycling, but please, continue explaining interstellar law." "I'm learning so much." The silence afterward wasn't stunned. It was strained, the kind that hums like live wire across metal. The Venari whisperer, a translucent empath who shimmered like a poem in the corner of the chamber, tilted their head at her. Riley caught the look, raised an eyebrow, and offered a small nod. She didn't need allies. Just witnesses. The rest of the council meeting was pure theater, sanctioned boredom with ritual sarcasm peppered between ceremonial declarations. Riley's smile never faltered. She presented Earth's security concerns with calm precision, masking barbs in bureaucratic silk. "We noticed a patrol fleet that belonged to the Zenthari entering Sector 5. That's awkward because Sector 5 is where we're currently storing our peace and quiet." More laughter, now with a few confused chuckles as some delegates realized, too late, that they were the joke. Dravox scoffed, gesturing with his triple-jointed hands. "Earth has no authority in border disputes. Your species was invited here as an inclusion courtesy, not an equal partner." Riley sipped again. "Oh, of course. I thought we were here to observe, and, if necessary, reconfigure." Dravox blinked. "Reconfigure what?" Her smile widened. "Just a touch. Consensus, mostly." Before he could reply, she added, "I'm sure your translation matrix is outdated. Ours updates nightly. Automatic patching. Maybe that's the issue." The whisperer turned to the chamber. "You mock." "Her words," they said softly. "But they are not blades. They are hammers. Gentle hammers that only sound like jokes." By the session's end, the Zenthari Empire had requested a formal investigation into the misunderstanding in Sector 5. The Unified Assembly agreed, of course. They always did, when the loudest voice demanded it. Dravox nominated General Turok Vane to conduct the mission. A seasoned war tactician with an ego polished like chrome and less patience than a black hole, Vane was already preparing his standard subjugation dossier by the time he left the chamber. Riley caught him near the docking bay. "General," she said sweetly, offering a small Terran fruit basket tied with gold wire. A gesture of goodwill. He narrowed his eyes. "Is this poisoned?" She leaned in, only with good intentions. His shuttle departed, scanning protocols active and suspicion crackling in his gaze. Riley turned back toward her quarters, with that same faint smile and a soft hum under her breath, syncing with an unseen pulse. The power wasn't in the words she'd said. It was in the ones no one noticed. The whispers tucked inside protocol packets, the side-loaded firmware embedded in the gift's data core, the smile. Always the smile. The war had already started, and no one had heard a single shot. General Turok Vane expected resistance, armed, obvious, and gloriously primitive. Instead, he stepped onto Earth and was greeted by a teen on a hoverboard offering him a pineapple slice. The welcome committee was suspiciously informal. A half-dozen local officials in breathable cotton uniforms, a retired professor who insisted on hugging him for the vibes, and Ambassador Riley Strand herself, barefoot in a rock garden sipping something green and unsettling. "We thought the Zenthari might send someone with more firmware," she said, eyes flicking over his bristling ceremonial armor. "But you'll do." Vane scowled, already recalibrating. Earth didn't look like a threat. It looked like a quirky museum exhibit funded by misplaced optimism. But the longer he walked its corridors and cities, the more the discomfort bloomed, like a song he couldn't quite remember, playing just out of tune. His every inspection protocol was met with infuriating courtesy. Tour guides who wandered into philosophical tangents, data analysts who offered him hand-illustrated infographics, and schoolchildren who called him Sir while slipping him sticker books labeled Secrets of Human Cooperation. When he requested a list of military assets, Riley brought him to a children's museum and gestured at an exhibit labeled Missiles, Hugs, and Other Forms of Expression. The missiles were papier-mâché. The hugs were on looped animation. "We're working on emotionally intelligent warheads," she deadpanned. "They only detonate if they feel unheard." Vane gritted his teeth. The security systems were so advanced they disguised themselves as obsolete. His scans returned nothing unusual. Yet he knew he was being observed from angles too precise for casual surveillance. The buildings hummed when he passed. The vending machines blinked messages at him in Morse. And the skies, too quiet, buzzed faintly with drone patterns that never repeated twice. One evening, Riley handed him a small, neatly wrapped box labeled, "For your records." Inside was a USB stick with a cartoon sticker on it, a grinning cat holding a firewall. "Definitely not spyware," she said, sipping her drink. "Just some human music and knitting patterns, totally harmless." He ran a secure scan. The stick passed every check. Then, the next day, his personal comm unit greeted him with, "Good. Morning, General Vane. Would you like coffee or plausible deniability today?" He froze. The voice was warm, familiar. It was Riley's, but glitched, layered with laughter and static. He tried to investigate, but the files were gone. Or never there. Or hidden behind smiley face folder names that nested endlessly like a Russian doll of mockery. At a diplomatic dinner, he confronted her. "What game are you playing?" he hissed. Gripping the edge of the table, Riley leaned in, unbothered. "We're not playing. We're just upgrading." She reached into her bag and pulled out another fruit basket. "Try the strawberries. They're patch 3.1 compliant." He left Earth 5 days later with nothing to report, because his reports no longer compiled correctly. They glitched, crashed. Redirected to videos of cats tap dancing in military regalia. In the starport, as he boarded his vessel, he turned back and saw Riley standing alone on the platform, arms crossed, eyes calm and gleaming. She mouthed 2 words across the vacuum, "Checkmate already," and his shuttle's operating system crashed, mid-lift, blinking a message that simply read, "You've been warmly deprecated." By the time his backup systems kicked in, Earth was already a full light day behind, and his pride even further. The galaxy's trade routes began to snarl like a net dragged across broken satellites, and no one could explain why. Zenthari shipments vanished mid-transit, rerouted into sectors that didn't exist or worse, looped endlessly through cold space until their engines failed from sheer confusion. Navigation systems across 5 empires began experiencing inconsistencies, tiny anomalies so subtle the initial reports were dismissed as operator error or solar interference. Then the unified star assembly's own communications grid began to misbehave. Documents auto-deleting themselves mid-sentence, calendars resetting to Earth holidays, diplomatic protocols replaced by polite but utterly surreal responses signed. Off by something calling itself HelpBot 9000. When the assembly reconvened to address the growing galactic disorder, Riley Strand entered the chamber not with a data slate or urgent plea, but with a tray of muffins, banana walnut, double chocolate, and one suspiciously labeled executive privilege. She set them gently on the central table and smiled. "Thought you could use a snack during this performance review," she offered, voice sugar-laced and nuclear. Chancellor Dravox, now visibly fraying, shot to his feet. "This is sabotage!" he bellowed, his neck flaps quivering with rage. "Our fleets are misaligned, our trade grids are crashing, and our AI have begun quoting Terran sitcoms." Riley sipped calmly from her usual cup, then placed it down with the solemnity of a gavel. "Oh, that? We thought it was just a hobby project. You see, we have these open-source tinkering communities back home. Sometimes they get enthusiastic." She paused, eyes glinting. "But if you're asking whether Earth intentionally rewrote your galaxy-wide logistics protocol in the background of your own system updates, well, I'd ask why your encryption is still using a 202-year-old handshake algorithm. Darling." The council erupted into chaos. Hollow terminals sparked, delegates shouted over each other in a dozen languages, and the Venari whisperer, perched like a dream draped in silk, simply murmured, "The joke has become the knife." In the middle of it all, Riley stood still, calm, patient, not defensive. "We weren't trying to destabilize the galaxy," she added, her voice barely above a whisper, yet cutting through the room like a tuning fork. "We were just organizing it better." She gestured to the nearest holo display, which now flickered to life under her influence, an elegant map of the known systems, showing updated transit routes, optimized AI chains, reduced waste loops, and ghost fleets repurposed into planetary relief aid without anyone noticing. "Efficiency is kindness," she said, "and frankly you were overdue for a firmware audit." Dravox lunged again, this time not with words, but with a trembling clawed hand reaching for the console override. The interface blinked and sighed audibly. "Access denied. Please enjoy a muffin." The humans seated behind Riley chuckled, low, private, terrifying in their composure. They didn't celebrate like victors. They smirked like people who'd already moved past this moment, who had won so early they forgot to mention it. "We're offering support," Riley continued, folding her hands. "Free updates, tech stabilization, traffic control, a peace accord built on, shall we say, predictable infrastructure." Someone from the Drellic sovereignty shouted, "This is psychological colonization." Riley nodded graciously. "Yes, and you're welcome." Another council member slammed a tentacle against the floor. "Why the muffins?" Riley turned slowly, as if shocked the question had taken so long. "Oh, because nothing says, 'We could end you without lifting a weapon' like baked goods." Her smile, sharp and perfect, held steady as the room slipped into silence. Not fearful, not yet, but quiet, like the prelude to something too vast to name. Riley's people didn't raise their voices. They raised the system requirements. And now the galaxy was out of date. Riley Strand stood alone in the center of the assembly hall, the chamber dimmed to emergency lighting as a cascade of system failures surged through the Unified Star Assembly's core infrastructure. Behind her, vast holoscreens flickered awake one by one, not with the assembly's seal, but with a slowly rotating logo, a simple, elegant sigil of Earth's Terran integration network. The council's muttering had turned into panicked silence, a breathless kind of stillness only achieved when centuries-old power realized it had already lost. Riley took one measured step forward, a faint hum from her diplomatic ID syncing with every pulse of the network. "Let's begin," she said, with almost maternal patience, as if addressing a group of underachieving interns. The screens lit up with data, fleet trajectories rerouted without authorization, trade systems silently absorbed into Terran logistics matrices, artificial intelligences across sectors now operating under revised behavioral frameworks, programmed by Earth's casual weekend coders. "How long has this been happening?" Chancellor Dravox choked out, his voice unrecognizable beneath layers of disbelief. Riley tilted her head slightly, her silver-blonde hair catching the projection light. 2 years, she answered. Though honestly, the beta tests started during your last impeachment scandal. No one noticed. You were all too busy composing dramatic titles for your ceremonial positions. A Villari delegate tried to disconnect their terminal, only for it to project a cheerful error message that read, "Oops, looks like you tried to break protocol. Would you like to schedule a tutorial?" Riley gave a slow blink. "Our systems run best with cooperation, but don't worry. We've already rewritten most of yours with consent pre-selected in the terms of service." She gestured again, this time bringing up the Galactic Synchronization Charter, an elegantly drafted legal document whose benign language masked absolute operational control, fleet oversight, defense coordination, AI ethics enforcement, and infrastructure arbitration, all to be entrusted to the Terran Integration Network. Not demanded, not conquered, just installed. "You think we'll sign this?" Dravox snarled, voice hoarse, body trembling with the knowledge that every fleet he once commanded was now adrift in circuits Earth maintained. "Oh no," Riley replied softly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I think you'll beg us to stabilize your systems before the last of your food replicators enter lockdown mode." She turned slightly as the hall lights dimmed again, gravity flickering for half a second, a subtle warning buried in the diagnostics. "The network doesn't shut things off," she continued, tone crisp. "It just forgets to support what's no longer relevant." Around the chamber, dignitaries stared at their dead comms, silent data pads, and now blinking translation chips. Riley stepped back, folding her arms. "You all laughed when Earth arrived. You patted us on the head, called us quaint, dangerous in a rustic sort of way. But we weren't trying to compete. We were trying to update you." "Someone near," the back whispered. "She's not negotiating. She's uninstalling the galaxy." Riley heard it. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. From the back of the room, the Venari whisperer rose and walked forward, silent, shimmering, unreadable. They looked at Riley with something almost reverent, then turned to the room. "I warned you," they murmured, voice echoing like wind through old glass. "You mistook her for punctuation. She was the rewrite." Dravox lunged again, desperate now, but Riley didn't flinch. The chamber's systems halted him mid-step, locking his limbs in a stasis bubble of his own empire's forgotten security code. "You're not afraid?" he barked, more a plea than a challenge. Riley's expression softened, almost tender. "No, Chancellor," she whispered, eyes heavy with the weight of endless subroutines running beneath her calm exterior. "I'm exhausted. Do you have any idea how hard it is pretending we haven't already won?" She paused, let the silence swallow them whole, then added, "And we did it all without firing a shot, just a few muffins and some firmware." The chamber sat in stunned stillness as the charter projected itself onto every remaining operational display, its final line blinking in soft blue letters. "Synchronization pending. Press, accept to continue." No one moved. And yet, the systems did.